Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, and welcome to another thrilling scene from the living world of darkness, Rage Across New York. This scene will be set in the Sept of the Green, and in fact, at least for the moment, we'll start at the Sheep's Meadow in the umbral reflection of the Sept. 10 Point has come out as she many times does to the Sheep Meadow, as it's a favored place for one to seek visions and seek enlightenment. But today, rather than being in the midst of meditation, she is simply enjoying the openness and the sun that she can't enjoy in the Tellurian. She has brought herself out into the meadow where I imagine any number of nature spirits and Gaian spirits linger. And with her antlers standing out even more than usual, some small measure of her spirit heritage kind of bringing them to one's attention as opposed to making them bigger and grander. She'll go ahead and have set herself out in the center of the meadow to where she's just surrounded by this beautiful open expanse of good weaver-free, worm-free space, the flowers, the grasses. And with her bare feet nestled in the grass and her eyes cast to the sky, she's tucked her violin beneath her chin and begun to play a song that is chosen perhaps out of her longing for her home, where things are simpler and things make more sense. And perhaps the effect would mostly lie on those of the Fianna who happen to hear her song, or more by happenstance and by closer proximity, happen to hear her words. But she sings longingly of going home while the sun bathes her face and body.
And yeah, Felix is on a run to a tech store on the opposite side of the Sept from where he lives, which means this is the time of day that he has to walk by. Now, having already purchased the things that he wishes to, he has since taken the time to slip into the Umbra and walk back in the hopes of avoiding the eye of his enemies and those who would scorn him for being in tune with the spiders of the city. And so he finds himself walking in the umbral reflection of the Sept, headed into the sheep's meadow. And just as he's about to pop his just as he's about to pop his earbuds in and crank it to 11, he hears a different song. One more, what's the word? Irish, and and certainly welcoming. And so, in this moment of hesitation, he um, puts his earbuds back in his pocket and starts to follow the source of the sound when he happens to find himself upon a 10 point.
He do. And for the sake of convenience, we'll say that he's probably coming in closer to the end of the song. It's not terribly long, but it's certainly, while she's hardly sounding like someone who belongs in an orchestra, there's a certain amount that is very heartfelt about the song. Um, though when finally she does bring it to a close, or at least the singing portion, she'll go ahead and open her eyes again and, be glancing around. It wouldn't be the first time someone's come across her as she was playing. So she will, in fact, perhaps spot Felix wherever he has taken his pause to listen.
Yeah, he's sort of like been walking closer, but when his gaze meets hers, he has that sort of uh, damn it, I have to think of a different phrase. No pun intended, deer in the headlights look, where he sort of stops his walk, seeing as how there's no real place to hide. It's an open meadow, and yeah, just sort of pauses for a second and then regains his composure and says, "I didn't know you played."
And yeah, she manages to get a glance of him and, of course, promptly looks aside because she doesn't make a habit of looking others in the eye. But she'll allow herself a very faint little echo of a smile, just that tiny upward turn at the corner of her lips as she brings the violin play to a close. And for Felix's sake, gives a little bit of a polite bow at the end. I
And
have
they,
been expected, Raya, to learn how to please the spirits, and in many cases that is with song, music, dance.
hmm. Well, it's good. I'm sure even our galliards would bat an eyelash.
I can only hope, Yuff. He is still Cleith, right? Did I fuck up?
For now.
Okay. I want to make sure I'm legit. And she's got the open case by her feet and goes ahead and gingerly lays the violin there. It's certainly not a flashy thing, and it's far, far from being new. The strings are probably newer and cared for and replaced, but the violin itself is fairly old and not in a classy antique kind of way. It's definitely a hand me down. If I may bother you briefly, Yuff.
Sure. I've got time.
And she'll go ahead and, once the violin is tucked, will probably venture a hand briefly into her swag. And comically, she will pause a second, pull her hand back out, and flick the. Her gloves have that little flap on the back that she can flick forward over the fingers to make them more mitten-like. And she will take long enough to do that before again sticking her hand into the swag and drawing out a small clay pot, a variation that he should be familiar with of a Gaia's breath, and offer it out in exchange for your time. Yeah.
Ooh. All right. So you have successfully schmoozed.
It is only polite.
And he accepts it and gives it a good look over and a nod of approval as he puts it in his spider satchel. Says, "So, what can I help you with?"
Well, Yef, I know that you are making efforts, but in the meantime, the Weaver is still very strong and still crowding our borders. I wondered if perhaps you could explain to me certain things about the technologies that fuel them, that give them strength and give them power and presence.
Hmm.
Things like how the phones work, what makes them send messages through those imaginary lines to each other, things that help to coordinate and empower so that perhaps we can take strides that don't involve attacking the Weaver directly, but distract her from the Sept itself.
I see. Well, as far as sending messages go, Umbral's side, a lot of the work is done by net spiders, traveling to and fro, making a lot of things work, but Telurian's side and its effect on the Umbra, I can't be certain, to be honest. He pulls out his phone to like jot that down as a point of research. Anyway, sorry. Tellurian side, all of our all of our electronics are connected by signals, waves. You familiar with waves?
She gives her head like, and she has kind of a sheepish look as she gives her head a slight shake, and of course, jingle jingles a bit.
No. And yeah, he holds up his phone for a second and says, "So when we use these things, um, as well as several other different devices, it sends out a sort of signal, like a soundless howl that only other devices can hear. And that's a simple way of putting one message getting to another. They also relay through various mediums like the like the telephone poles, the wires that connect them connect through these things called cell phone towers, and sometimes just straight through satellites that exist out in the points up to the sky. So, I imagine in the deep umbra as well, but just out out in the stratosphere.
Could you show me what these towers and things look like, Kyaf? She kind of gestures to his phone.
Sure. As he's typing away, he just mentions, kind of look like the Garu glyph for glasswalkers. Now that I think of it, but a little something like this, and turns it around for her to see.
Yeah, I assume he's just pulled up like a Google image search of what cell phone towers look like.
Mm-hmm.
Sweet. And yeah, she will very politely not touch, but will lean in a little bit to get a proper look at it, kind of knitting her brows in that totes studying this sort of way for a couple moments. And then nod faintly and stand herself up again.
And the satellites look a little something different. 1 second here. Here. Turns his phone back around. These. Sorry.
That she's got more of a head cant going on because space is way outside of all of her breadth of learning. She's got that reading, writing, and arithmetic, and that's about it.
We send these out into space, the heavens, the deep umbra, if you will, and they sit out there and they travel around, circling Gaia, sending signals to and fro. A lot of them take pictures.
Blink. Do you think, Yuff, that maybe if it's all signals that ties it all together, there's a signal that we could make that would make it hard for them to hear each other or understand each other, so that they would have to perhaps retreat rather than trying to attack the Sept?
Hmm. I, in theory, I think it would work, but for how long I couldn't be certain, considering that's one of their main objectives right now. Is
Maybe.
is keeping an eye on everyone, and I mean everyone. Keeping an eye on us, keeping an eye on the wild, keeping an eye on the Weaver, to learning all of it. So, I don't know. Maybe we could work it in short bursts.
It could be a way to scatter an attack, right? Yes.
Or even forge a path out in the Umbra.
We could certainly use any advantage we could get. There are many, many Weaver spirits and only so many of us. That is why I thought that perhaps if there were ways for us to disrupt rather than provide some sort of frontal attack, we have a better chance of succeeding in sending them back to whence they came, as far as into the city, into their secure places, rather than coming out here and coming after us.
It'll be a lot of work, but maybe. I know there would be consequences. Tellurian side and the Umbral reflection.
I know little about what this would mean for things on the Tellurian side, Yuff, but anything that forces a withdrawal on the Umbral side, I think at this point counts as success. It is this, or eventually the warder will have to call war.
And that would result in many a suicide.
Yes.
I don't know. I don't know if it would work in the long term. But I know the Tellurian side, the 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 humans, Homets, they're all very attached to these. And he wiggles his phone a little bit. So when they stop working, there's a bit of an outcry to get it fixed as quickly as possible, which only shows to prove the Weaver's grip on mankind as well. But they'll come looking to solve the problem, fix the source as quickly as possible. So I would strongly advise to not doing anything that would disrupt any signals on Sept, as to not provoke an attack.
Oh, of course not. No, I hope to. Perhaps I'll speak to the pigeons, but. Or perhaps to Teresa Raya. But if I can get a look from. And she kind of points upwards from high above and see the web, one can pick free anchor points. And it's disruptive, but it doesn't destroy the web as a whole unless one takes them all. Perhaps if we can target the things that anchor the Weaver's webs and throw her into disarray, she will be forced to withdraw and to resolve the problem instead of stretching her influence outwards.
At this point, I am going to roll a willpower.
Go for it.
Boop. Dice roller 001, 3 successes.
Wow.
He manages to bite his tongue in his own mouth and do so in a discreet fashion. Tries to think of a way to. Well, when being a win, I understand that, but I, I'd like to stay involved in this plan.
Of course. I know, Yef, that your tribe is very tightly tied to these things. I would never look to go over your head. And I would never look to do something that would anyway hurt what your tribe does. I am simply trying to find alternate solutions that don't involve direct conflict with the Weaver.
Maybe, I wonder. I wonder if there's a way we can.
Perhaps if you want to go back to the thought of the waves, Yef?
Yeah, I'm trying to think of what if we made some kind of talon, one that did precisely that.
Things like the sound that a whistle makes that only a dog can hear. Something that puts out natural sounds, maybe, since the wild is so anathema to the Weaver.
Hmm.
Things like whales' cries, bats' cries.
Maybe.
Maybe taken up to a pitch that only the spiders can hear.
Hmm. I'm reminded of of a of a test that Broken Whispers once put us through before you arrived on set. Um, there was a prize that he gave to Final Right, and I think it had something to do with maintaining a safe space in the Umbra. Yeah, I'm not sure exactly, but if we could do that with Weaver spirits,
She
maybe,
tilts her head a little.
like like using those signals as a means to create a for lack of a better word, a bubble around us, that a perimeter that the spiders couldn't cross.
Ah, yes.
To be careful, though. I imagine that once the bubble goes down, and he makes a pained face.
They would probably be very agitated.
Yeah.
Simply for the sake of saying it, Yef, I do not believe that we should attempt to kill the Weaver, just in that we cannot kill the worm so much as we must always fight it back. But in this case, I feel like sooner or later we will have to do something to set her back on her heels a bit. And I will make every effort not to do this without respect to you or your tribesmates.
Thank you, Ten Point F. My own endeavors. I'm trying to find that something that'll give us the edge, much as you are. I see. I'm looking for that blind spot, or the hole in the armor, something.
I feel like just as the humans rely on her, Yuff, to a point, she must rely on the things that they make. Perhaps if there's something they have made, something that grants her greater strength and greater ability to move, if we can remove that thing, if we can destroy whatever fuels it or makes it work, it will sap some of her strength and give us better footing. And in that way, we can perhaps solve the problem, Yuff, without having to make direct assaults on her and her kind.
Well, definitely curious as to what that is. The only thing that immediately comes to mind is the webs. There's an old tale. Tale about how the weaver in ancient times, as as you know, the humans and mankind are the weaver's chosen. The weaver had a favorite event. It said the weaver tied a web to each one that went without seeing. And when the Impurgium struck, and their numbers were culled, that each severing of the web resonated back to her, sent her a little deeper into the madness.
I don't know what to think, Yuff. The Weaver was maddened well before, I believe, humankind came to be what they are.
Some would believe that that's the straw that broke the camel's back, so to speak.
And she purses her lips and kind of, gets that thinking back look, trying to recall the various teachings she's been given.
I What I mean to say is we should be very cautious about the webs themselves. Just I I don't believe that that's a solution we should turn to.
Sooner or later, Yuff, we have to provide a solution to the worm foe that seems viable enough to work. I can think of very few others. Temporary protection is good, and it is a thing we need. But sooner or later, we need to think of something that will set her back without disrupting your work.
Need more time. Felix rubs his temples for a moment and runs a hand along his face. Frowns some.
She hangs her head a bit, as she can tell that she's frustrating him deeply.
You're not the first to say this, Jeff. Not to me, anyhow. It's been said to me by the Wormfell himself. I.
Is there anything I can do? Anything you can teach me, or that I can aid you directly on, that will help you gain the answers you need?
best I can do is arm you with the knowledge of the Weaver, and that maybe it'll help guide you in the Seekers just as well as it guides me. There's always something. It's a funny thing about a problem, isn't it? That there's always something you don't see, something that's always right there.
Then perhaps with more eyes on the problem, yeah, one of us will spot that thing, that solution. I would be honored if you would teach me about the Weaver.
Well, aside from that tale, I know we've had at least one experience in the cyber realm. But
I am thankful that it was as comparatively uneventful as it was, as opposed to what might have happened.
it was kind of fun, though.
It was certainly exciting, Yev. And I'm sure that if you needed similar help again, Mariah would still be eager to come and help you, as he did before.
And Felix looks around for a place to sit, and then he looks back at 10 Point and says, "Do you have any plans this evening?"
Besides my chiminages, Yev, no. And they are a good ways off still.
You should find a place to sit, and I'll tell you more.
And she glances around because, I mean, she's perfectly happy to sit in the middle of a field of grass, but she'll consider it and kind of look off in a particular direction. Would you prefer the porch? Yes. I'm sure that my pack will not mind sharing it with you.
Certainly.
And she nods and again has that small smile because, well, she's learning something, goddammit. And she'll go ahead and close the violin case and flick open the flap on her magpie swag and carefully tuck the case into that. And then we'll turn and make the generous gesture in the direction of her pack's cabin.
And I think there, with Felix and 10 Point, headed to the cabin's porch to talk about the Weaver and sip on tea and perhaps smoke the herb. That that may be a good place to end it.
Yep, that seems like a pretty good place. So we'll say thank you, players, for playing and watchers for watching, and we'll see you next time on the Living World of Darkness, Rage Across New York.